Why don't we shift? We're going to ask each of the panelists one question just to talk about the Lumen values, and then we'll open it up quickly for some other questions from the audience. So, Jason, you just wrote the book. I heard your interview, and there are a lot of Lumen virtues that are mentioned in the book, specifically in character. But maybe you could explain a little bit about how you showed that or showcased that in the book.
Yeah, well, I'll be quick about it. In the book, let me manage your expectations. It's not exactly War and Peace, but two-thirds of it's largely a memoir. I started in the business about 27 years ago, and I love this business. I love Wall Street, and I think it's. I feel very strongly that it's an honorable profession. So. Two-thirds of it's a memoir, though, of just doing all sorts of things, starting from being a cold caller to working in the back office to being an institutional salesperson. I was an FX trader, done all these things. And I loved every minute of it, really. So, and I met a lot of characters along the way, as you might imagine. So I wanted to talk about that. And the last third is really a defense of the industry. I'm sure it could have much better advocates than myself. But I wanted to talk about how it can be and is an honorable profession, and how the concept of being a fiduciary which has a lot to do with, I think, a lot of the Lumen values, is really what drives the business. So I went through the Lumen values, and frankly, the last part of the book, the very last part of the book is a poem my dad loved, which is a poem called The Hound of Heaven by Francis Thompson. So some of you may or may not know the poem, but it's one of the great Catholic poems of all time. I end on that. So Catholic themes are throughout the book, and there's really, I would say, I won't go through all the Lumen values, but there's three that that I focused on that I think are, wind up being throughout the book. The first is perseverance under character. And let me tell you, the book is no victory lap at all. It's very honest, I think, about both, I've been very lucky, but I've also gotten tackled in the backfield a lot of times. And, it's about just kind of keep going. So there's that. As far as, leadership is concerned, as someone who runs a company now with 52, 53 people, it's sometimes hard to remember that I'm supposed to be the adult in the room. But integrity, right, is the consistency between how one lives and what one professes to be. And so that's a big part of when I started this company 9 years ago. I try very hard. I have an office, but I sit on the trading floor, and I spend almost no time in my office. I'm right out there in the middle of everyone, and sometimes not easy, but you're trying to set an example for a lot of people in the office. And then the last thing I'd just say, generally speaking, is the faith has been a constant, and faith is important, obviously in so many ways, but it's important in surviving both your failures and your successes, I've found, because both have their pitfalls, right? Because you can give in to the failures. You can also give in to your successes and start to think that, you're something special. And then you realize that, ultimately our true rewards come in the next life. So in any event, that's a brief, I hope that was brief, view of what's in the book. And I hope you enjoy it. So,
thank you. All right, Steve, you've got a number of projects that you do throughout the year. Maybe you could take a second and talk about it.
I'm not going to talk about them all, but one I'd like to mention, because I see Monsignor Sicano here from Old St. Pat's down in Soho, which is a wonderful parish and one of the great priests of New York, frankly. But one thing, he said to me a couple of years ago was, Steve, I got all these young adult 20, 30-somethings in the parish, and they have two problems with being Catholic. One is they don't think you can be successful on Wall Street and be Catholic, and two, they can't understand the sexual mores. So I said, okay, Father, I really can't help you with the sexual part of it, but I can take a stab at the other. And I did a seminar for him and for his parishioners about how the Lumen core values are not just good for growing your spiritual life, they're good for running your business, which I think is totally true. And I think Jason already said it, but I'll briefly clip off three. One, self-mastery, right? This is a big Lumen value. It's something that successful men in particular struggle with because we're used to getting our way, cutting people's off at the legs, screaming at our wives when we get home, etc. And, so getting control of yourself is a big part of the spiritual life and growing in your spiritual life. But my goodness, it's also critical in running portfolios. People that can't control their emotions and take a deep breath and think it through carefully and just, are really subject to getting whipsawed. So self-mastery to me is actually one of the things we teach in the office, not just in terms of mutual respect, but also in terms of being successful. Confidence in God is another one. Certainly, to grow in the spiritual life, you have to have a certain faith, a confidence that God is there. But I'm telling you, it all seems real fun and dandy here, but you go through markets like 08, 09, when you wake up in the morning and everything's marked down 5% before you even get to the office, and you're losing literally. I see my son Michael here, and they used to tease me. This was in the first bear market, I think, that he was alive for. I've been through many, but 2001, I go home for dinner, they go, well, Dad, how much money did you lose today? And I'd say, I don't know, like $1-2 billion. It's like, whoa. So, okay, but, confidence in God helps in terms of keeping a certain serenity in periods like that and knowing that it's not all about now. I don't know, this might scare some clients away. Going like, well, the guy doesn't really care about my money. But, I think serenity comes from confidence in God. I pray every morning to God to help me be successful in what I do and also to control my emotions. And the third, I'd say, is integrity. You get nowhere in this world if you don't have that. Obviously, in a spiritual relationship, it's critical. But we're trading millions, hundreds of millions of dollars over the phone with people on a handshake. I have analysts in my office. I always tell them, listen, the only thing worse than not having an answer is a wrong answer. I mean, I might actually do something with it, right? So, integrity is very important to us. And I think it's very important for being successful in business. So those are my three.
Steve, thank you very much. John, we'll finish with you, but being a lawyer and trying to protect the assets as you eloquently went through, sometimes you got to be walking a fine line between morally what's right versus legally what you can get away with. How do you walk that balance?
First of all, I think that there is no distinction between my colleagues here on the financial side and what we do on the legal side. From an integrity standpoint, it is critical that we run our office that way, and that the people around us that work for me we're representing people, that are, one is selling a company for $1 billion, and we're putting these assets into trust. It becomes enticing to easily fall into a tract of shortcuts. More times than not, it's not $1 billion company. It's something significantly less. But clients count on you to have a high degree of integrity. In the early years, when I didn't know as much as I know now, and of course, the more I know, I was always laughing when I heard David was here. He'd say, "I'm a sinner, Lord," and we all are. But the more I know now, the less I really think I know, and I continue to push harder. I would say, though, that humility is very, very, very important. And your clients, when you're an estate lawyer and you're in a firm, count on that humility. And in the early years, they would say, I know you don't know the answer right now, but I really believe that you are deeply concerned about my well-being and that you want to do the right thing. And to me, that is enough. And that was a giant gift that many of our clients gave us because it allowed us to push further. But even in our office, the people that we often choose to work with us and that thrive have some sense of faith and confidence that there is a being higher than us. And when things go well, they credit it to some divine intervention for us. So I would say that. I think when you start way ahead in that way, you find that both your clients and your strategies, even if you get pulled back to the mean, are always focused on doing good things. More times than not. We don't find ourselves in positions when clients come in and they say, I want to create a trust to avoid my spouse who I'm planning on divorcing, or to avoid child support, or to avoid accidents that have happened. For us, fortunately, there is a correlation between the types of clients that come to us and the types of clients that we want to work with. I would tell you, I've said to BJ that my secret weapon is every day there's a half a dozen new clients that we'll be meeting with who've never met us, we've never met them, and they're entrusting us to do a family mission for them. And I start every meeting before I go in with a prayer to the Holy Spirit. It's just inspire me to hear your message throughout this meeting. And it works. Father Michael is one giant pain in the neck when he's like, I haven't seen that you've been before the Eucharist a couple times this week. So what I do is take a picture when I'm in front of the Eucharist and I text it to him. Then he says, that picture looks like the same one you sent me the past few times. Are you just copying it and sending it to me? So I do think there is a value, a very, very important value in Lumen, which is accountability. I've been in prayer groups for years. You swerve in and out as people in your neighborhood or your community are there. But something with Lumen is accountable. And I'll finish by the last piece that keeps me online. My colleague to the right of me is a titan, and he is astounding in his education and his culture. And BJ said, "Why don't you go down to St. Patrick's and with him, leading up to one of the religious holy days?" So I went down there, and this guy is in his commando, and he's giving out rosary, and I'm like, this is hard. But for him, you were incredibly impressive. One of the all-time great stories is someone came over and said, I got these rosary, and I'm not sure that they're blessed. And Steve's whole plan was, let's get them into church and get them confession. So he comes to me, and this person says, I got this rosary. And I say, well, I think that they probably, of course, and Steve goes, they have not been blessed. And we need to take you right into church right now and get them blessed. And I said, I guess the good Lord will forgive us for this ever so slight stretch of the truth. But I believe the Holy Spirit was working with us. And for those of you who are younger in the room, I wish that we had an organization like this where we could look up to people who are leaders in our community and still see that giant sense of spirituality and focusing on something greater, as you had said before, on than this earth, and preserving our life. And I am honored that BJ's son and my daughter are here as well. They're not even out of high school, and they're feeling the need to do this. So I think that's how you get to where you are.
And thank you very much. That's terrific. We have time for 2 quick questions, maybe 3, but does anybody want to throw anything out to the speakers? Yes, Rob.
For Mr. Ock, I didn't hear you talk about goal. What's your perspective on goal, short-term, medium, and long-term?
We're completely out. It's just really tough. It's the whole commodity complex is very negative right now. And everything is going going up in smoke. The one thing about gold, though, is it does have a couple of other angles to it. So we've been watching it because one way to hedge against a scenario in China that is not in our base case could be gold. But we haven't pulled the trigger on that one yet because, you know, you look at the charts, it's a falling knife.
Thank you. Other question?
I'd ask one if I can. It's a discussion in and around when you look at investments. How do you look at it from a faith-based perspective of, is this an entity that we think that meets our moral or our obligations and our approach to things, and yet balancing that being a good investment?
Well, the guy who should answer that question is Raul. I mean, I'm telling you, we have such talent at Lumen, but Raul Pineda, Raul, just stand up for a second, but Raul is one of the real class acts over at Morgan Stanley, portfolio manager, and he actually runs the portfolio for the Legion, the international global portfolio. And the good priests, you know, have that kind of idea, like not this, not that. And the way Raul became a member of Lumen, he came in my office one day, I guess I'm on the advisory committee or something, and he came into me to intercede for him with the priest. He says, Steve, he goes, I can't, literally half the market here is off limits, you know, because we can't do this, we can't do that. I mean, most companies, they're in everything, you know, and I don't know that I really solved his problem, but at the end of the meeting, I said, Raul, I think very shortly I started talking, I don't know that we really got very far other than Lumen. And I promised you we would solve your problem if you joined Lumen, and you did, but we didn't solve your problem. So, you know, it's tough. I mean, we feel we have a commitment to our clients to run the money according to a prospectus. And in the mutual fund business, there are funds and prospectuses that are sort of socially responsible, but everyone has a different view of what socially responsible is. So you got to be very, very specific. By the time you make the list so long, you know, the cost and performance to the clients is so substantial, they don't want it. And the one thing we can't do, you know, I've had this discussion with the founder of our company, who's you know, as people know, Jack Donahue, one of the great Catholics, you know, and he would call me up and say, we shouldn't be investing in that company. I said, Jack, you know, we can't, if we're going to do that, we've got to disclose it and let people know that's what we're doing, and we're imposing our values on the thing. We could do that, but we're not going to raise any money. So it's tough. I mean, we kind of take the view, we're investing money for our clients. We're trying to make the best possible return. We're a couple of degrees removed. I mean, I don't know, I have the Padres here. I'll probably have to go to confession later. But we're a couple of degrees removed at least from the sin, if you will. And it's going to be there. So you know, that's how we kind of think about it.
Are you asking at all about the capital markets too, or it's just the investment part?
Well, in general, I mean, we've actually, I'm out of the Houston chapter for our limited. We had a discussion, for example, like, one of the things in Houston is like Rick's nightclub or strip clubs. You know, when they went public. You know, obviously that doesn't. That's an easy one.
Okay, but no, okay, that's an easy. Okay, there are certain things that just aren't that good of a business.
Right.
You know, so yeah, we ain't. None of my PMs would come near. Okay, because they know that I would then make a case very carefully about why that is a really lousy business for us to get into. Note the way I would make the case. I mean, so you don't see you're not going to see that kind of stuff. But pharmaceutical companies, we own them all. And I don't know how to get around that.
Okay, I think we were going to have to cut it there. So thank you very much.
No question about it?
I'm sorry, was something?
Hold on. I'm sorry, did someone else have a burning question?
Yeah.
Yes.
So just curious, for the younger folks and us middle-aged folks, 20-year, 30-year, long-term equity return, what do you gentlemen see as a reasonable forecasting number?
Well,
7.
Thank you, Steve. All right, with that. Is that a good answer?
No, I think it's not what a lot of people think, when they think 10% plus for equities. I think it's probably.
Yeah, I think if anything, for the next 10 years, it could be less than that, just given where you're starting in terms of interest rates, inflation, long-term interest rates, short-term interest rates, inflation, and PEs. But the long-term averages are roughly around 7.5, which is almost precisely what long-term average of earnings are. So it's a pretty good number to use if you're using a 20 or 30-year average.
Inflation is also much lower.
Inflation now is much lower.
Yeah.
What worries me, Raul, is that I think a lot of that largesse, the generosity of all those central banks, I have a feeling will result in something other than low inflation, in time. But so it's very bullish for 2 years, somewhat modest for 10 years, and more modest, longer term.